Recorded live.
First of all, the NRA should just change their name to the Assassin's Lobby. Because that's what they are. Yeah, you can applaud that. Somebody should applaud that.
And I'm here to tell you, 1776 will commence again if you try to take our firearms. Doesn't matter how many lemmings you get out there on the street.
But you have to have people in leadership to espouse something worth believing in. So I've challenged the status quo.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice. And let me remind you also that moderation in the pursuit of justice is no virtue.
This is how liberty dies. It's under the blow.
Welcome to Liberty Cat Talk Live. This is your host, Todd Andrew Barness, and his co-host, James Landrus Jr.
Hey, everybody, welcome to Liberty Cat Talk Live. We are now on the air. And yes, I apologize for being late. I was having a brain fart tonight. When I was trying to enter the numbers to call into the show, I was like, you know how it is when you're dyslexic and you're reversing one set of numbers for a different set of numbers. That's exactly what was going through my head, and I'm like, I felt like I was like, and I was having that mentality, like not really Planet of the Apes mentality, but more like, I guess you could say 2001: A Space Odyssey mentality, like the beginning where there's the apes and you got the monolith. Well, you get the picture. Well, anyway, I was having that kind of a mental breakdown there, serving as my official brain fart on the show tonight, just so everybody knows. But that's what happened tonight, so there we have it.
The challenges of brilliance.
Yes, the challenges of brilliance. Okay, so just want to let everybody know that unfortunately Jim won't be able to come to the show tonight. He won't be hosting. I'm taking over the hosting duties because his wife's in the hospital. I guess she was having emergency surgery, and her surgery got infected, and it was like, ew. And one of the panelists won't be on tonight. She was having telephone and connectivity issues, so there you have it. So it's just two panelists and me and our very good interview guest who will be on with us shortly. So there you have it. All right. Okay, let's get this show underway. Let's get the show on the road. He is the former national chair of the Republican Liberty Caucus. He's currently an alternate director of the Republican Liberty Caucus of California. He's a good friend of mine, used to be in the Libertarian Party, an all-around great guy, and a wonderful addition to the Liberty movement. Please welcome Bill Westmiller. Bill, you with us?
Yeah, I was sort of involved in the Libertarian Party. I was the founder of the Canadian LP and national secretary for the Libertarian Party in the United States.
Oh,
just
wow. Okay, Bill. Okay.
I'm sort of involved, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of figured. And finally, our second and our last panelist for the evening. I wish we had a full panel, but a partial panel will do for tonight. He is the permanent panelist on the show. He's a great friend all the way around, and he is the founder and blogger of Global Political Awakening Tom, except it's only at Global Awakening at .blogspot.com. Please welcome my Daniels. Mark,
Yes, I am, Todd. Thank you very much. And welcome to the table, Bill.
Run that by me again?
I said, and welcome to the...
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Okay, so...
Todd, one other thing. I've invited a friend to join us tonight, and the only way he can join us is via Skype, and I need you to add him. I sent you the information earlier.
Okay. When did you send this information? Just now, or?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So that means I have to add them. All right. Tame.
Yeah.
So Tame Elf wants to be part of the panel tonight, or?
Yeah. He just wants to listen in and possibly comment or add his perspective. Yeah.
Okay. Well, is he from Douglas, United Kingdom?
He is from Douglas, United Kingdom. He lives on the Isle of Man.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. I'll add him right now. I just sent him a request. So let him know. There you have it, Tame. He is from the Isle of Man, and he'll be joining us in a second here. So it's going to be a very interesting, I guess, things are working out after all. So there we have it. Okay, so while we're on waiting for him to respond to my my contact request on Skype, let's get the show on the road. Okay, so we saw what happened this week with this Canadian dude who practically, for all intents and purposes, killed a Canadian soldier right by the, Parliament building in Centre Block, and there was a lot going on. I want to play a clip. Actually, I want to play this part of the speech of the Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper, who actually had a lot to say on this subject, and he, for all intents and purposes, this is what he had to say on this. Here we go. This is Stephen Harper on terrorism.
For the second time this week, there has been a brutal and violent attack on our soil. Today, our thoughts and prayers are with the family and friends of Corporal Nathan Cirillo of the Argyll and Suffolk Highlanders. Corporal Cirillo was killed today, murdered in cold blood, as he provided a ceremonial honor guard at Canada's National War Memorial. Fellow Canadians, in the days to come, we will learn more about the terrorist and any accomplices he may have had. But this week's events are a grim reminder that Canada is not immune to the types of terrorist attacks we have seen elsewhere around the world. Attacks on our security personnel and on our institutions of governance are, by their very nature, attacks on our country, on our values, on our society, on us Canadians, as a free and democratic people who embrace equity for all. But let there be no misunderstanding. We will not be intimidated, or Canada will never be intimidated. In fact, this will lead us to strengthen our resolve and redouble our efforts and those of our national security agencies to take all necessary steps to identify and counter threats and keep Canada safe here at home.
Okay, so I guess the question that's on everybody's mind is, what motivated this guy to kill the soldier and attack the Parliament building? Was he a member of the ISIS terrorist organization, or is the media, as you eloquently put it, Mark, drumming up more fear into our psyches?
It's the latter. It's a ruse. It's a ruse. There's nothing to fear. Okay, there's really nothing to fear. These are people that are heavily medicated. Usually, the reason they do these things is because of the medications that they've been given. Oftentimes, they are even under mind control, and they are working on behalf of the shadow government. So how is that for a conspiracy theory?
This is interesting. Considering that I think this is in part of a gun control matter, but this is also in part because
there's always a lot of different agendas that they have with each event. So it's not one thing. So it's real easy for them to think, oh, you think that's why we did this, or that's why it was done? You're crazy. You must be a crazy conspiracy theorist, right? No, there's many agendas involved in each event.
Well, so I guess part of it, I think, is because of the situation going on. And, the situation involving this guy, he happens to be, for all intents and purposes, let's call it like it is. This guy is basically a really fucked up, psycho, for lack of a better phrase. What do you say to that, Bill?
Well, what are there, 10, 20,000 murders almost every week in the United States and Canada? And this is just another homicide. The guy, whatever his motives might have been, whatever his background is, whatever drugs he might have been taking, or how crazy he was, it's just one person that killed one other person. And that happens every day, hundreds of times a day. Now, it happens that he killed somebody who was a soldier, and that's the only reason it's getting any media attention at all. If he just went to 7-Eleven and shot somebody because he didn't like to look at their face, then, it wouldn't have made the news. So I think it's totally overblown, totally, political.
It has the. I was just going to interject and say it has all the markings, or let's not say all the markings, but it has a lot of the markings of even the staged event.
Well, staged, I don't know. The thing I read first was that he was a Muslim, and therefore, but he said, well, he's a Muslim, so he must be, a crazy Islamist. He must be a member of ISIS. He must be part of a major plot that's going to overthrow the Canadian. It's all bullshit. It just
it fits into the narrative that's being presented by the powers that shouldn't be, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's just it's playing on people's fears that there are people out there, killing people on the street for no reason.
Yeah.
It's just
you can add. I'm trying to add Tame to the call here, but it's saying add to group call. So I guess we're going to add them to the. I'm trying to do that for him, but let's see if I can bring Tame in right now. Actually.
Thank you, Todd.
But that being said, I think that it is bullshit. I agree with you, Bill. I think there is something seriously wrong to this problem, and I think that this is a very big problem all the way around, no matter which way you go with this. There seems to be some sort of a systematic effort to inject a lot of fear, a lot of paranoia, a lot of hysteria and pandemonium. I mean, no matter which adjective you want to throw in there, the fact is there is something bullshit going on, and it needs to be combated. Hi, Tame. How you doing?
Hello. How's things?
Hi.
I've only just listened to the last, 30 seconds, and I guess I know exactly what you're talking about already. All the fear porn that we're getting bombarded with that actually takes us away from what's really going on.
Right.
And we know what's going on anyway. I do anyway.
So
I know they're all corrupt.
So, what's your take on this whole Canadian thing? Do you think that there is is this guy a member of ISIS? I'm not buying the fact that he is a member of ISIS. I'm not buying into the fact that he is saying this shit. That the conservatives are saying, well, this is a terrorist attack. This is a terrorist attack here in the U.S. I'm not here, buying into this notion that.
Todd, it's police state propaganda. And fear porn, right?
Right. So that's a big problem. And
I can take this back to about 1833 with a guy called Albert Pike. You've obviously heard of him.
Well, the name doesn't really ring a bell. Who is Albert Pike?
He was Illuminati, but he basically predicted that there would be 3 world wars. And the First World War, he predicted, if you Google Albert Pike, you'll know. See, the thing with me is I kind of just hit the peaks and I don't go into the depths of all the knowledge that I've actually got. So I just know basically that this guy predicted 3 wars. He explained the reasons for the predictions of those 3 wars, and he wrote this paper in about 1833 or possibly earlier, and the Third World War was all to do about Muslims.
I think the wars that we've been going into, Afghanistan, Iraq, Lebanon, the other wars like Libya, Egypt, Yemen, and now we're going to be on the verge of possibly going into Iran and also possibly with Russia within the last few months.
Well, this is a plan that was set forth dating as far back at least to 1830 and Albert Pike, but more recently you can take a look at the Project for New American Centuries white paper, Rebuilding America's Defenses, and they lay out their plan in this document, and it's coming to fruition. And you have people like General Wesley Clark, who spilled the beans in a live interview not too long ago. I think it was in 2007, where he talked about a meeting he had at the Pentagon where he was told about this plan. And so everything that's happening is propaganda. It's staged events. It's all designed to gain mass support for this next big war. Okay, the next big war that will be the war that ends all wars.
Because they want more and more wars added to the situation. What do you think that we're going to have another world war on our hands, Bill?
Well, I don't think the Ottawa incident indicates that at all. I mean, the conspiracy, if there is one, is primarily the media. Hasn't got anything else to report. When was the last time you heard a news item out of Canada? I think maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And this is just an opportunity for the politicians to make, a big to do about the fact that he was a Muslim. And it's the media. The media has to sell advertising, and they have to have some story that's horrific and terrible and disgusting and so on and so forth. And so they just grab whatever they can, and it just happens that this was one of them.
Well, that's exactly what we've got to. It's everything is being looted. We as taxpayers are being looted to fund the wars that are destroying and culling population. It's all satanic. You only have to look at all this. At the moment, we're going through the period of the end of the First World War, it's all armistice and crap, all poppies, and it's just a massive blood ceremony.
Well, I'm not sure what you're talking about. Are you talking about the military-industrial complexes around the world that want to have a war, and so everything that might in some way relate to Muslims or ISIS or something like that is just all part of it?
It's all being funded by us.
Yeah. Yeah, because we have to maintain the military-industrial complex. The only way they can make a profit is if people are blowing up bombs and killing each other. And so, the only reason we have wars is to, finance Boeing and Raytheon and Halliburton and all those guys.
Correct. And until we change, they won't change. And it's pointless going on the streets and protesting because these people can only deal with violence.
I think we need to be mindful of the fact that because of what's happening with ISIS and so forth, this is definitely a prelude for maybe World War III. And it can be easily argued that way. And, of course, you're going to have a lot of the people in the military-industrial complex saying, well, there's just no way that's going to happen. We're not looking for World War III. Fuck yeah.
World War II and a half. As long as people are blowing up bombs and killing people.
That's right.
The United States financed the Sunni awakening back during the Iraq War because they wanted this nice grand democracy in Iraq, and they wanted the Sunnis and Shiites to get along. So they spent billions of dollars bribing the tribal chieftains in Iraq. They gave them weapons, they gave them training, they gave them all kinds of stuff. And after the bribes stopped, and after the Iraqi government started oppressing and killing all the Sunnis anyway, they said, screw this, let's start our own war. We're going to overthrow the Iraqi government, and let's get some money from Saudi Arabia, and we'll take a shot at Syria first. If that doesn't work, we'll go back to Iraq. And the U.S. It's all billions of dollars.
Right. Now we're gonna put this on the table for a second. We got a caller on the air, and he is the chair of the National Libertarian Party. He was just elected chair this year. And I've known this gentleman for a number of years, particularly on the old Libertarian Republicans Yahoo group. And very smart guy all the way around. Probably one of the top libertarian attorneys I know in his neck of the woods. Please welcome our very good friend, Nick Sarwark. Nick, you with us?
Thanks for having me. Sorry it took a while for me to get connected.
Yes,
I'm here now.
You're here now.
Welcome to the table, Nick.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you for joining us, Nick. It's great to have you on. And I just wanted to start off by saying that it's about time the LP is getting going into full gear and full-blown course to getting the message out and pushing for liberty more so than, say, the establishment Republican Party. So my kudos to you and to the National Party itself. But let's start with how you got into libertarianism and how you managed to get elected to the national chair seat of the National Party this past July.
And before you do, I would like to ask everyone that's not speaking to mute your mics. That way we don't have the background noise. Thank you. Go ahead, Nick.
All right, so I got into libertarianism because my father was a libertarian. He took me to a libertarian meeting in Phoenix probably when I was 10 or 12 years old and had, David Bergland's book around the house. And I'm one of the few second-generation libertarians, although there are more of us coming up every day. And hopefully my kids will end up being third-generation libertarians. As far as how I ended up being chair of the National Party, I saw that we had gone about 10 years without a lot of growth, either in members or money or, political success. And, going into the 2016 election cycle, I felt like it was time for a change. And so, I mounted a campaign and I won.
Congratulations.
Or is that commiseration?
It's a little bit of both. It's a tough job.
Yeah.
That was a good one, Bill.
That was a good one, Bill. I have to admit here, I guess the question that I want to ask you about, what do you think the LP has done right and wrong throughout the course of its existence so far? I mean, I think the LP has done a lot of great things. I think that there have been some wonderful things going on. I've spoken to a lot of people over the years. They were not happy with the way things were progressing in the party. Do you think the party is turning around after the disastrous presidential nomination of Bob Barr in 2008?
Yeah, I think, what the party's done right is stick with, libertarian principles and not back away from, common sense views about human freedom. The things we've done wrong always come down to, sort of backing away from a real libertarian message. The Barr campaign was not my favorite. He kind of came into it, I think, expecting that having had been a congressman, that things would go a lot better than they did and didn't really have a plan for how to run a libertarian campaign. But I'm more forward-looking than backward-looking. And I know what we're doing right now is continuing to present a strong libertarian message and continuing to kind of put the lie to the idea that there's anything left of either the Democratic or Republican parties that's worth saving.
Right.
Well, speaking of looking forward, Nick, I would like to extend an invitation to you as the chairman of the Libertarian National Party to join me and the Arkansas Libertarian Party in promoting through hosting of a screening of the film Alongside Night, a film created by J. Neil Schulman based upon his 1979 graphic novel by the same title, Alongside Night. It is an excellent movie that contains within it the message of freedom. And I think getting the National Party behind it will help it and the National Party both. And all the proceeds from the screenings can go to each state chapter. to help their coffers. And so I just wanted to, live on the air, put you on the spot and invite you to join us.
Well, I appreciate the invitation. I know that there was a screening of it at the National Convention in Columbus. I know a number of our state party affiliates have had a screening of it. As far as the national party goes, it's always tricky for us to screen anything just because, all politics is local, and it's even more so in the Libertarian Party. All the action is really at the state affiliate level. That's where they nominate all the candidates except for president. That's where they, go out in the streets and actually fight those elections. So, the best I can probably do is let the state chairs know that it's available.
That's right. That's right.
But we're also a pretty decentralized party, so I don't get to tell any of them what to do.
Of course. As
Never
it
could.
should be. We don't want to violate that most basic rule.
Right. Yeah. Well, as libertarians, even if I could tell them what to do, they probably wouldn't.
It's like herding a bunch of wild cats, right?
Cat herding would be easier.
Yeah.
Speaking of something,
Remember, Mark, we're not a bunch of wild animals, that need to be in a zoo. We're doing just fine. You were going to say, Bill.
Yeah, speaking of something old and something new, I just looked at my biography, and this is actually the 40th anniversary of me being elected National Secretary of the Libertarian Party. So that gives you an idea of how old I am.
That's a good anniversary to have.
Yeah, 40th. And looking to the future, obviously next year.
Congratulations, Bill.
Next year is an election year, and I assume that you're in contact with people who've expressed an interest in running for president. Is the LP going to have a credible candidate next year?
I think we will. I know Governor Johnson is considering it, although he hasn't officially announced. I know that Joshua Katz from Connecticut just announced an exploratory committee last weekend.
Really?
He did at the Massachusetts Libertarian Convention. Those are the two that I know of offhand. There are some other people, I hear things, but nothing official.
We need a libertarian candidate who is a melding of both Harry Brown and Ron Paul in the party, who is going to extend further than what Ron Paul was able to accomplish in the GOP in both 2008 and 2012. So that would be if we can find that candidate, and if it's either Johnson or maybe Joshua Katz, that would be fantastic. I wish Gary Johnson would drop the fair tax position and come our way a little bit more on that. But so far he wasn't all that too bad on the position. He was far better than, say, Bob Barr or Wayne Allen Roots.
You're not setting a high bar, buddy. No, I saw him speak at the Colorado convention. He still supports the national sales tax as some sort of interim measure, but he's backed off it some from where he was when he was running in 2012. So, I hear that criticism a lot, and, everybody's different, but if people keep working on him, he might change his mind, and, he might not.
We have our work cut out for us to with regards to that, especially the fair tax. But I guess the question I have is, with this midterm election, and it's been prophesized so far that this election is going to be a downer, particularly for the voters, particularly for the millennials. And everybody is like, no, I'm staying home. I couldn't give a rat's ass if, the Republicans overtake the Senate or if the Democrats somehow do an upswing. I think that I think the fault obviously is coming from the major parties, but what can the Libertarian Party do to get the millennials, back them up, and possibly overtake any one of those candidates running on the GOP or Democratic sides?
Well, first thing we have to do is show up. We've got 786 candidates running this election cycle. My hope is in the 2016 we have, double that number. We have to let people know what we're about, because the surveys show that most millennials have very libertarian views. There's a couple of things they might disagree with us on, but far and away they agree with us more than any of the old parties. And frankly, I don't know if you've watched a debate with, a Republican and a Democrat when a Libertarian's not there, but it's childish and stupid. They spend all their time talking about you're just a shill for Obama, or you're just, a tool of the Koch brothers, and you're unethical, and not a word is said about any solution that would increase liberty or freedom. But when you get a Libertarian on stage in that debate, it's clear who the adult in the room is. When Sean Haw was on stage with Tillis and Hagan in North Carolina, they just kept sniping at each other about, who was shadier and who was a worse person. And Sean's actually talking about, stopping war and legalizing marijuana and marriage equality and not spending so much of our damn money. And it was clear he's the only adult in the room. And that, just getting that message out there, people are smarter than we give them credit for. If they know that we're there and we're presenting a serious option, then they'll vote for us.
Right. Well, what really gets my goat is when you have wingnuts like Ann Coulter, who appeared on Stossel a few days ago. And she was doing a segment where she said that she wanted to drown John Stossel because of his support for libertarians, because of the election cycle where you want all these radical situations. Just do it within the Republican Party because we got to stop the liberals and whatnot. And and I'm thinking to myself, the first thing that she says coming out of her mouth is, oh, well, libertarians are costing Republicans seats. They're spoilers in the race. I'm thinking, you idiots. Libertarians are helping the races, not costing elections. Even if there were no libertarian candidates running, the Democrats could either win or lose the race either way. Same thing with the Republican candidates. And she goes, well, that's not true. That's not true. What do you say to that?
I say, who gives a shit? This is the internet, right? I can say that.
Wait. Was that Nick?
That was me.
Nick? Oh, Nick,
I don't care which of the shitty old parties wins an election, because they both cheat with both hands. They both spend all their time and money trying to keep us off the ballot and keep us out of debates. And I would challenge you, the next time somebody says it matters whether a Republican gets elected, name the last tax a Republican cut. Name the last government program a Republican shut down.
Exactly.
And listen to the deafening silence and tell them to take their shitty old party and move on to something more productive.
And shove it up their ass. Let's just put it
well, I don't want to say that.
Okay, there you go.
I am a national chair and all.
Right.
But I would encourage them to move on to more productive pursuits. I talk to conservatives, and I tell them, look, more power to you if you think you can fix the Republican Party. But I've seen what happened in 2008 and 2012 and what's probably going to happen in 2016. The GOP machine will crush any libertarian impulse within their party. And so as soon as you get tired of beating your head against that brick wall, as soon as your head hurts too much, come on home to the libertarians where we actually believe in freedom, and you won't have to fight us to fight for freedom. We'll fight with you, not against you.
But you know something? What really fucking pisses me off about Ann Coulter, more than anything else, is that she is the one who, as far as I'm concerned, she is this stupid-ass nitwit who is, drumming up the war machine, drumming up the welfare machines, and she's oiling every single Republican candidate out there who wants to grow the size of the state. As much as, say, Al Sharpton wants to grow the size and cost and scope of the state as well. And,
Well, Ann Coulter is just whoring herself out. Let's just put that bluntly, too.
Yeah, she's nothing but a media whore who really wants to pretty much destroy libertarians.
Not to criticize you guys.
The only thing that pisses me off about Ann Coulter is that she doesn't wear a clown suit. And she really is a clown. The things that come out of her mouth are so humorous and so ridiculous that I think she should be required to wear a little rubber ball on her nose or something like that.
I don't think she needs to because she's
mentioned the name of a washed-up performance artist at least 4 times in the last 2 minutes.
Yep.
Are we talking about the same person?
I'm not even going to talk about that person. If she wants to try and drown me, she'll find out I've taken swimming lessons. But, she has and it doesn't really do much. She's not serious, and giving her the attention, we thought about releasing a press release after she threatened to drown all of us and decided that we'd rather not give her the oxygen.
No.
Thank you for doing that.
Well, I think that was very commendable, and I think you did the right thing.
No doubt about it.
I just wanted to say that, if she is a clone, Bill, does that mean that she's Ronald McDonald's cousin married to her?
Ronald McDonald's hamburgers, I'm sure, are much better than Ann Coulter's.
I don't know now. I don't want to be quite that cruel.
To get Ann Coulter off the agenda here, I have some good news for an LP candidate. Got 2 votes for sure. Aaron Starr, who is a member of the LP National Board, I believe, is running for Oxnard City Council, and we happen to live in Oxnard. This is in California, near Los Angeles, and so of course my wife and I both voted for him. And helping out a little bit in the campaign. But this is a nonpartisan office, so he's not mentioning his party affiliation at all, even though it shows up in some of his bios. So what I'm curious about, you mentioned some number, 700 candidates.
786.
How many of those are for partisan offices where they're actually identified as libertarians?
I believe that is the partisan count, but I have to go double-check with my national staff to be sure. I mean, I'm aware of Aaron running. I actually sent him a check early on before he even had a website up. And those are good races to run for those libertarians who feel that that's where they would be the most effective. The way I look at it, though, is the partisan races are more beneficial to the party as a whole.
Yeah.
The reason being that it's a type of free advertising because it says libertarian on the ballot. And if we can keep showing up and make it normal that libertarian is just an option that's there with those other 2 crappy options, then we can win the credibility battle and get more people to actually vote for us. We spent a couple $100 or I don't know how much it was, to actually put a statement in the Oregon voter guide against their top 2 initiative, over my signature as chair of the Libertarian National Committee, because that's basically free advertising for the Libertarians. The state of Oregon is going to print out that pamphlet and send it to every Oregon voter. So, every time a Libertarian runs, it's kind of like free advertising for us, and it just reminds them that we're not going away.
Well, you have to send a thank you note to the state of California because they have a ballot argument thing on propositions. And back when I was the Libertarian Party of California chair, I wrote the argument against one of the propositions, and they printed up God knows how many, 7 million copies of this thing, with the Libertarian Party of California chairman William Westmiller arguing in opposition. It was Veterans Bond or something. So I've been doing that all along. I'm not sure that's done all that much good, but I do recall, because I was active back then, that Dave Nolan made it perfectly clear when the party was founded that the purpose wasn't to elect libertarians, but to take advantage of the opportunities that come with being a formal political party and having designated candidates so that you could participate in the debates or at least expose the ideas through media and so on and so forth, practically for free. And I'm very impressed, and I think the LP has been very successful at that task. Electing partisan candidates to office, not so successful. But if nothing else, you're influencing the national debate, and you're influencing the state debates and the local debates, and the word libertarian is becoming part of the cultural lexicon. People, more and more know what it means, and that's a big accomplishment.
Yeah, and I know that David, may he rest in peace, didn't start the party thinking that we'd win elections, but there's no reason why we shouldn't start doing it anyway.
Well, you have to get...
I'm sorry, go ahead, Bill. I'm sorry.
No, I was just say, in practical electoral terms, I think that the highest vote total for any partisan libertarian office was something like 16% when there wasn't a Republican in the race, and something like 6% for three-way race.
Maybe in California, it was in the high 40s in Colorado last election cycle. Because here's what happens. If you show up in all the races, it turns out that on occasion the old parties nominate people who are less than stellar. There was a guy in Grand Junction area in Colorado who he was a police officer, and maybe he was corrupt, and maybe he lied about a bunch of stuff, and then maybe the local newspaper actually endorsed the Libertarian over the Republican, and but if you don't have somebody in the race, you don't have the opportunity to take advantage of it. And that a lot of this is showing up. And my personal opinion is that if you don't show up, you can't win. You might not win anyway, but you definitely can't win if you don't show up.
True.
I remember back many years ago, I heard many years ago, even when I first came into the party, that there were maybe one candidate who got elected to the state legislature, or maybe there were a couple or so. I can't remember. I can't remember her name honestly, but I think it was in Vermont or Connecticut or one of the states in the New England colonies. But she actually did. She won. I think by a landslide or something, and I think she was there only for maybe a term, maybe two. I'm not so sure. I'll have to look into that. But still, I think that there is something to be said that libertarians can win state legislatures to advance to, say, Congress and the Senate. Because, as far as I'm concerned, the lackluster appeal for the midterm elections, Democrats typically lose in midterms, and only only Republican candidates happen to be the victors during that period, with the exception of 2006 when the Democrats won the midterms, and that was it. But what do you think is the next step for 2016? Do you think that we're going to have a much bigger slate of candidates for 2016 as opposed to this season? And if so, what's the strategy? What do you think that the strategy should be?
Well, it's a multi-pronged strategy. We at the national office have developed candidate training to improve candidate communication, the ability to kind of turn mainstream interviews away from the topics they want to talk about and refocus on, cutting government and advancing liberty. We're expanding that training program. We're expanding affiliate support so that we can help those state parties that do want to show up for all the elections and do want to flood the zone with how to recruit candidates, how to recruit good candidates, how to create a volunteer effort to, candidate recruitment is not rocket science. We've run huge slates in Colorado when I was in the state party there, and it just comes down to getting, a spreadsheet and getting volunteers to get on the phone and ask people to step up to the plate, and then thank them after they have. So I think that we can get a significant improvement in the number of candidates that we've run, not just over 2014, but over 2012, because it is a presidential year, so there's more races going. And I think that I've seen vast improvement in the quality of candidates that are attracted to the Libertarian Party. There's a state candidate in Ohio named Chad Monin who's put in $100,000 of his own money. He's a small businessman and retired vet. There's, Lucas Overby down in Florida is in a two-way race, and he's really solid on the issues. Sean Haw in North Carolina, everyone made fun of him because he was a pizza delivery man. But as the races progressed, he's just shown that libertarianism makes sense no matter who the messenger is. And his race, actually, I don't know if you saw this, has attracted about $300,000 in dark money from a Koch brother-backed organization to try and use Sean Haw to attack the Democrat by highlighting that he's pro-marijuana legalization and anti-war.
That works.
So,
right. There are worse things for them to do than spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to tell people that libertarians are awesome. If they want to do it to hurt some other old party, so be it.
I have a question for you you can't answer.
Okay.
Or at least that you won't answer. I understand that the LP bylaws forbid your party from endorsing Republicans or Democrats or anybody in the party.
Correct.
Assuming, and it's not impossible, maybe the chances are slim, that Rand Paul gets the GOP nomination for president. I assume the LP will not endorse him, but what are the chances that the candidates, Gary Johnson, whoever, will decide that they would rather not, distract people from Rand Paul's campaign?
It's funny because I did answer a question that was almost this question for a reporter from U.S. News and World Report just yesterday.
Okay.
So it's a question I've mostly answered. The way you phrase it, I can't answer it. But here's the deal. The Libertarian Convention is going to be in Orlando in May of 2016. I expect to see you all there. I'll look forward to it. The GOP nomination won't be wrapped up until sometime in the summer of 2016. So there's no way that the convention delegates could, the question that was asked by them was, would the LP not run somebody or cross-nominate him? And the answer was, it's just not possible to do that because it won't be settled out. Now, the question you asked is a much smarter question, which is, our presidential candidate, what will he do if it turns out that Rand Paul does get the nomination? You know, I have a fiduciary duty and just a natural desire to support the Libertarian candidate. I'm not the biggest fan of the junior senator from Kentucky because he, you know, actively goes out and campaigns for Republicans against Libertarians. He's their go-to guy to close an election if it looks like a Libertarian-leaning, you know, primary opponent is getting out there or a Libertarian candidate is getting too much press. You know, he's the guy that goes in and assures people that they should really vote for this, you know, party machine elitist hack because Rand Paul's standing next to him. But, you know, I think that's a good question to ask the potential nominees at the convention in Orlando. So before you give them the nomination, you know what they would do, whether it's your opinion that they ought to step aside or drop out of the race or stop actively campaigning, or if it's your opinion that they shouldn't. You should at least know what your nominee says he's going to do before you give him the nomination. Right. So I would hold that question until May of 2016.
Okay.
Right. I was just going to say, if we're talking about somebody who is somebody, for all intents and purposes.
You're going to say that Rand Paul is a quasi-libertarian?
Sorry about that. I got pulled in by Will Coley, our friend Will Coley for Muslims for Liberty. So just so you know. Okay. So, as I was trying to say, Nick, are you talking about like standing by somebody who is unlibertarian, like, say, Mitch McConnell or Ted Cruz?
He's supported Mitch McConnell. He's come out and endorsed Mitch McConnell. We have a libertarian in that race. He actively campaigns against libertarians. He is not our friend.
Right.
Let me take a slightly different perspective on that issue. You had a little bit of a rant earlier about people involved in trying to change the Republican Party, and of course that's precisely what the Republican Liberty Caucus does. We're basically libertarians trying to work within the Republican Party to get their positions more in line with libertarian ideals. And it's primarily a tactical or a strategic plan that has worked out quite well in a lot of different states. And it's actually got people that maybe they weren't pure libertarians, but they, advocated libertarian positions and so on.
There's no reason, Bill, why we can't all work together. Continue.
Oh yeah. But I just I'm a little uncomfortable when I hear Libertarian Party people saying, "Oh, those people in the GOP that want to change it to libertarian, they're going to get crushed, and it's a hopeless case, and so on and so forth." And I don't think that's necessarily the case. So I'm just asking for a little bit of deference to the true libertarians that are using a different tactic.
How many?
Right. That's your path. That's your path, and I want to commend you, for what you're doing.
And don't get me wrong. I think that the RLC does good work within the Republican Party. I do not think that they are historically effective, and I do not think that they can be as effective as the Libertarian Party, which is why I'm chair of the Libertarian Party and not the RLC. There is a short list of libertarian-leaning Republicans who have actually been elected to office. Where the RLC runs into a real challenge as an organization is when are you willing to walk away from the Republican? When are you willing to say publicly, don't elect that Republican?
Well, here's a perspective. I mean, we have a statement of principles. We have a candidate quiz that we send out to all the potential candidates.
They do.
So, and the criteria is if they get 80% or higher on the quiz, then we're willing to consider them if they're viable candidates and so on. However, look at it this way. If we can get libertarians in the GOP to successfully change the direction of the party and to get actual office holders with strong libertarian leanings elected as Republicans, when the Libertarian Party becomes evidently viable as an electoral organization, what's going to happen? It's all of those RLC candidates who are in Congress or in the Senate that are going to look at it and say, hey, maybe I need to switch. And so you may end up with a lot of incumbent politicians with very strong libertarian leanings switching to the LP as soon as they think it's viable enough to get them reelected.
That's true. That's true. And there's another thing. I just wrote an article for Reason that hasn't published yet about why people should vote Libertarian. And I had a bunch of reasons, but one of them is the truth is that if you are a fan of libertarian-leaning Republicans like Massey and Amash and Paul, then you should vote Libertarian, assuming that you're not in Michigan's 3rd or Kentucky's 4th district. You should vote Libertarian because, frankly, that gives them cover to buck the party machine. If there's a sizable Libertarian bloc, they can go to their leadership and say, look, don't tell me not to be Libertarian. Look at all these Libertarian voters. If you don't let me vote my conscience on some of these things, we're going to lose some elections. So, voting Libertarian can actually help the people who want to work within the Republican Party more so than voting Republican outside of, a particular couple 3 districts.
Well, I'm in California, and it's interesting because, of course, all the ballots are secret ballots.
Right.
But even while I was chairman of the RLC, I was voting for LP candidates whenever they were on the ballot, even though I was.
Of course you were.
Even though I was, out there saying, you Republicans have to, get more in tune with the libertarian positions on the issues if you want to get some of these voters. And so,
ultimately,
and you know something, Bill. What's really disappointing about the GOP, if anything else, is that for the longest time, you have so many social conservatives who have ruled the GOP for far so long that they really don't want to let go. When it comes to issues like gay marriage or the war on drugs or even, say, police state issues, there's thinking, oh, well, we got to still make it so that only men and women can get married, but not a couple of gay men who really want to say I do's before their priests or their pastors or whoever in a church or a chapel. If we can't
I think that was true 20 years ago. I don't think that's true anymore today, partially because of the libertarians in the party, but also because of the general cultural milieu. The social conservatives are dead in the water. Every time they run, they get beaten like crazy, and just even among the establishment, they don't want those crazy social conservatives coming out and say, well, rape is just a bad case of the woman enticing men, or whatever stupid comment they make about that. And gay marriage. I mean, the premier attorney that is most widely recognized as a prominent Republican influential person was the chief person arguing against DOMA in the Supreme Court.
Yeah, but wasn't it him and Boies together, wasn't it? It was Walter Olson and David Boies.
Yeah.
2 people who have been on the opposite sides of a lot of things.
Right.
There's been movement in the Republican Party
Yeah.
But it's not. I just don't think it's good enough, because what it's moved to is, if you look at Rand Paul, he still opposes gay marriage. He's just smart enough to hide his light under a bushel and say, well, let's just leave that to the states. He still opposes marijuana legalization. He just thinks we probably shouldn't punish it as much. So there's movement, but the nature of politics is you have to be
right.
The Overton window doesn't shift unless there's somebody outside it saying, get all the way over here.
What's really disappointing about Rand Paul is that, while he says that he's against interventionism, he's trying to push more Republicans towards non-interventionism, which sounds great, but then he says on the other side of his mouth, well, we need to launch some drones to wipe out some of the enemy Al-Qaeda or some of the members of ISIS, for crying out loud.
He also said to an evangelical group that an attack on Israel is an attack on the U.S. And if there was a military attack against the state of Israel, that the United States Army would be required and obliged to invade whatever country that is.
By the way,
I wonder if he wants congressional approval for that.
Right. By the way, folks, this is Will Coley, the founder.
Hey, Will.
Will of Muslims for Liberty. He's also joining us tonight. So
I was wondering who that was that joined the call, and it's quite a pleasure. Welcome.
Yeah. So, he's also joining in as another panelist with us. Why not?
Yeah, so the thing about Rand Paul is he's triangulating.
We've still got, I'm sorry, I was just going to say, don't forget we still have Tame Elf on the line.
And we also have Tame Elf on the line. What do you think about, do you have a question for Nick, Tame?
I haven't voted for I don't know how long, 15 years. There's never been a politician anywhere near me. I'm in the UK, and Labour Party tend to look after the poor, but they're supposed to. Well, that's the theory behind the party. And the Tories, the Conservative Party, tend to look after the rich. But over the last 20 years, it's been like a parasitical loop that the agenda never changes. Just people are getting ripped off. More legislation is introduced, and I'm actually on this program, by the way, under my real name, believe it or not. Now, I'm not going any further into that on this particular talk because I don't want to embarrass anybody on the show.
Well, you're not embarrassing anybody, so you don't have to worry about that.
I love everybody. I can't harm anybody on the planet. That even means by embarrassing them on a live radio show.
Oh.
So I will not. No, I'm serious. I can't hurt no one. That is emotional as well.
Yeah.
So what are you doing with all the drones in your backyard?
Sorry?
What are you doing with all these drones in the backyard? I think I better look out my window see one of your drones is out there just in case I say something wrong.
Oh, drones? No, well, we had a census about 2 years ago, and when the guy come up my path, I basically told him that he was working for the American government, and I couldn't give him any information because that would be treason against the British government.
There you go.
And I was correct. And it's just the way it is. It's all divide and conquer. It's pointless. I'm doing more to change my environment by doing absolutely nothing and standing in truth.
Right. I guess I wanted to ask you, Nick, this whole thing about ISIS, we're all, we're neck deep into this, this whole situation in the Middle East. We're trying to, fight the Muslims, and their home turf. They're, all Muslims are terrorists, and we keep hearing this from the pro-war crowd, and the Obama administration, is soft-pedaling on this, and the Republicans are like, well, Obama's not doing enough to, wipe all those people out of existence. He's not dropping a bomb on Mecca. What do you think about ISIS and the current geopolitical instability in the Middle East?
I think that there's no way. So when this whole thing first started, probably like 4 months ago, we were literally firing our missiles to blow up 155 millimeter artillery pieces that we had given to the last set of good guys in order to fight the bad guys. But the last set of good guys maybe left them behind for the new set of bad guys. And the quote-unquote plan is that we're going to find new good guys to give a whole bunch of money and weapons to. And they're sure as shit not going to become the bad guys like the last good guys did. This time we picked them the right way. And right after that plan got passed, or not even passed, right after Congress rolled over and let the president do whatever he wanted to without any sort of check or balance, there was a bombing in which half of the quote-unquote good guys we had picked all got killed in a single house while they were having a meeting. So we're sort of running out of good guys to fight the bad guys. You may know where a really bad dude lives. Who the hell says to themselves, well, I want to go fight him in his own house? That's insane. Why would you go fight him in his own house? When when cops would arrest violent criminals back when I was doing criminal defense, it's the drug dealers that they kick the door down. The violent criminals, you kind of wait for them to go to the store when they don't expect it, and then you pick them up. This idea that you would go to their home base and decide to fight them on their own turf is insane. Just tactically insane, putting aside all of the, non-interventionist, and the fact that we can't afford it. It's just dumb.
Right. I think you were going to say something to that effect. Well, go ahead.
You talking to me?
Will Coley.
Okay.
Oh, me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. Well, I mean, you have to look at the situation, and it didn't really just start, 4 months ago. This is a situation that's literally it's a century old. We set, we personally, the Western countries, particularly the United Kingdom, set the chessboard for today's modern reality. With the Sykes-Picot Agreement and the Balfour Declarations and Winston Churchill thinking that he could create nation-states in the Middle East where nation-states had never existed before, and then purposely draw lines on a map over tea, as he bragged one time, putting groups of people that historically didn't get along with each other. Even when there was the Ottoman Empire and they all lived under the Ottomans, the only way that they got along was the fact that they weren't forced to follow a singular leadership. Each group was allowed to have its own leaders. Just no one was higher than the Ottoman leader. But each community, from Christians to from Christians to Jews to Zoroastrians, animists, pagans, variant Muslim groups, the Kurds, and they all have their own independent leadership, independent of the Ottoman leadership. And basically, that's what started this whole thing. Then they put the Saudis and their violent ideology and their violent understandings of the faith had been all but completely eradicated right around the turn of the 20th century. They invaded Mecca. They actually militarily occupied Mecca, burned buildings, burned libraries. the stories that were given by people in Mecca was that the armies were literally treading the Quran under their feet, if that gives you an idea of how religious they are. They were actually walking on our holy book, which is a massive insult. But they were literally almost completely wiped out. And then the UK saw them as a group of crazies that would help them overthrow the Ottomans and started funding them 10,000 British gold pounds a month at the turn of the century, at the turn of the 20th century, pumping money, weapons, military training, soldiers into their efforts to overthrow the Ottomans to destabilize the region. So foreign intervention is what caused this mess to start with. And I don't understand how anyone in their right mind who has the ability to sit back and actually look at history can think that foreign intervention would be what solves the problem.
And let me just add that they took relatively free people, okay?
Yeah.
A relatively free people compared to how we live in America today, even, right?
Yeah.
We are not free. We are not free.
Well, funny enough, and John Locke, his contemporaries that didn't like him used to actually mock him and say that he was Muslim because of his position on pluralism, and they would mock him as a homosexual because of the fact that the Turks had a hands-off approach to homosexuality. That's your culture and your way, and has nothing to do with the state.
And we also have to take into account that American colonialism is also responsible for this as well.
Well, it was French and British colonialism first, and basically the Americans went in there and just took the reins from the colonial powers that were already there.
Right. You're absolutely right. Because remember, especially with respect to Iraq is actually a country that was invented by the British and the French.
Mm-hmm.
And now, and with full backing on some level by our government, by
the CIA.
But with the CIA, coming in and going in, installing the Shah of Iran in '52, and then next thing you know, the deposing of the Shah in '79, which actually was the reason why there were hostages going on at that time. So the whole situation was started largely because, we had to do something to control the Middle East and re-engineer society. Re-engineering society has become the big thing.
Well, the good news, Todd, is that the controllers, in the truest sense, are the controlled, okay? This system that all of consciousness has created, that means we're included, right?
Right.
We created this system, and those I come from a Christian tradition, right? And the mark of the beast system that the Bible talks about in Revelation 18 when it says, "Come out of her, my people." What I have found is a way to truly come out of this system. And I spell system CYST because it is cancerous. And the way you come out of it is what all the great philosophers and great thinkers throughout history told us. Know thyself. Know who you truly are. You are not that name that people call you, because when you were born, that name was sold to the Crown Corporation when your parents registered you at birth. Okay? So you're not that name, and you're not the body you're in. You're nothing but pure, eternal spirit. And so all this stuff, the political parties and politicians will never solve any of these things we're discussing tonight. It's impossible for them to.
I wish this country had actually adhered to Washington's old axiom, which is peace, friendship, and commerce with all nations, entangling alliances with none. That's what Washington said. And remember, John Quincy Adams, who went before the legislature in the 1820s, said, America does not go abroad in search of monsters to destroy. That's exactly what he was trying to warn us. He was warning us that if we continue on our path, because we were going after the Barbary pirates, we were going to, at some point later on in the 19th century, sticking our nose into the Philippines.
It's all an illusion, Todd. It's all an illusion. All that we think is real isn't real, and all that we think isn't real, that which is invisible, is all that is real.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, I was hot. The concept of
gentlemen, I gotta go.
But
I thank you.
But Nick, I just wanted to ask you one final question.
Okay.
Are you going to be running for the chair seat again in 2016, or are you going to, reserve your decision until then?
Probably yes, unless I do a really bad job.
You're gonna run against Matt and I? You're the guy with RLC, right?
No. I'm chair of the Libertarian Party.
Yeah, Matt is RLC.
So I'm going to run against whoever thinks I'm doing a bad job.
All right.
Well, take it easy, Nick. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you're with us. And, coming 2016, if I'm ever in the convention seat, you'll definitely be getting my vote.
All right. Thanks very much.
Yep. Take it easy.
All right. Bye.
I wanted to say one thing, Todd, about Barack Obama. Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, Barack Obama is a liar, right? Everyone knows that. And he's also a lawyer. And if you think about the phonetics, the sound of the word lawyer, you might as well be saying liar, right?
Well, there was a movie Liar with Jim Carrey in it. Okay, so what does that tell you?
Well, I've reached a point in my life where I cannot tell a lie.
Anyway, I'm just wondering, with what's happened in respect to, like, for example, these 3 teens that left Denver, Colorado. They were heading on to Syria to join ISIS. And this is, remember, this is coming from the lamestream media, of course. But they were on this flight. Apparently, according to the story goes like this. They stole $2,000. 2 of the teens or sisters, they stole $2,000 from their parents, and they were on this flight to Frankfurt, Germany, but their passports were flagged, and they were sent back to the U.S., large in part because the FBI traced them. Does that, was it really because it was ISIS that was trying to recruit these young teens, or were they just, looking for love in all the wrong places, or what? Does anybody really have any feeling that, gee, maybe this story sounds too good to be true?
Well, 90% of the terrorists that they've managed to find were people who were recruited by, financed by, and equipped by the FBI. So I think that's probably...
Very true. No, well, let's look at this from a classical legal perspective. Since you do have someone on the line who's able to offer one. First of all, you stole from your parent. Completely, if you're going to go do something in the name of God, and you're leaving on a journey, and the way that you begin it is not by stealing from someone. That's the first thing, right off the bat. If you're going out to do God's work, so to speak, you don't begin God's work with theft. Actually, that would be a violation of the Qaeda, that you cannot create good through harm. But let's take it a little further. They took off with, not only did they steal from their parents, but they left to, quote unquote, join jihad without the permission of their parents. So what does the text? Because ISIS accepts these recruits. When they show up, ISIS doesn't ask questions. They just accept the recruit. So what does the text, what do they say about it? And there's one that says that Abdullah, the son of Omar, related that a man came to the Prophet Muhammad and asked for his permission to join in the military effort. And the Prophet asked him, "Are your parents still alive?" The man replied, "Yes." And the Prophet then said to him, "By serving them, you perform jihad." So it gets even better than that. There's another story from Abu Sa'id that says that a man immigrated to the Prophet ﷺ from Yemen. So he traveled about 700 miles.
Right.
The Prophet ﷺ asked him, "Do you have relatives there?" The man replied, "Yes, my parents live there." The Prophet asked him, "Did they permit you to leave?" And the man replied, "No." The Prophet then replied to him, "Then go back to them and get their permission. Otherwise, accompany them in kindness." Right. And another narration says that Muawiyah al-Samalami said that Jahima came to the Prophet and said, "O Messenger of Allah, I want to join in military effort, and I have come to consult you." The Prophet then asked him, "Is your mother still alive?" He said, "Yes." And the Prophet said, "Then go be with her, for verily paradise is at the bottom of her feet."
Right.
So the text states that it is improper and illegitimate to leave for military campaign without the permission of your parents, and for you to accept a recruit who has come to you without the permission of their parents.
Which
ISIS is breaking the rules, and so are the girls themselves.
So that means ISIS is going against the word of Allah in the Quran.
They're going against the Sunnah. The Sunnah is Muhammad did this in this situation, so that's what you should do. And what he did in a situation where new recruits for military showed up, he said, "Did your parents tell you could come?" And if they said no, and these aren't like kids. I'm talking like 30-year-old men. "Did your mother tell you it was okay for you to come and risk your life?" No. Then go back and take care of her.
And
well, what has happened in part though is that Muhammad, what Muhammad was doing was showing the way, the same thing Jesus did was show the way, right? And what has happened is religions have perverted the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Religion,
individuals, religion. I don't think that it's religion. Excuse me,
But I think part of it, I think a lot of it is because you've got certain organizations or supposedly this organization ISIS, which is supposed to be this group that's establishing an Islamic State, which is supposed to be creating this caliphate, if you will, and it's supposed to erect these caliphs who will be these rulers and whatnot. I think the Quran would be speaking out against the creation of these caliphs.
Well, the Prophet ﷺ said that one of the things that set Muslims apart from other people was that we were to never give power to those who sought it. That was how I knew that al-Baghdadi with Daesh, ISIS, I call them Daesh because they hate it. The leader of Daesh, al-Baghdadi, made a public statement where he demanded that all Muslims swear fealty to him. That's how you knew right then and there that his leadership was illegitimate. because the Prophet ﷺ said that righteous leadership never goes to those who seek it. That's the reason why there was a Sunni-Shia split, was because when Abu Bakr took the position of leadership immediately after the Prophet Muhammad died, people thought Ali should take it. But Ali wasn't willing to pursue power because the pursuit of power is a violation of his faith.
Right.
If he pursued the position and was willing to fight to get it, then according to Muhammad, that meant he didn't deserve it.
That's now, these girls were supposed to be 15, 16, 17. Okay, that sounds like numbers that were pulled out of the media's ass. I mean, we're talking about supposedly these young girls who were on this flight. For all I know, they were going on this flight to Frankfurt, Germany to go to a Justin Bieber concert, for fuck's sake. I mean, you know, isn't it really pathetic that the media is making a huge hay over this story? I mean, considering the fact that the media has been, by and large, ignoring what's really happening in the Arab world, which is we're killing innocent Muslims left and right with the size of the American military forces and the UN and also the other nations that are on board with us are just turning a blind eye to it.
I'm wondering, though, if the reaction from the media and the state would have been the same had those girls went to join Peshmerga rather than the Daesh.
You probably wouldn't have heard a peep out of them.
For real. Even though Peshmerga is listed as a terrorist organization. And I mean, I'm not against the Kurds fighting for their freedom. You know, if you target civilians and you hit non-military targets, then there's an issue. And Peshmerga has been accused of that. But I'm wondering, like, if these girls had went to join a group that is listed by our government as a terrorist group, but they're on the quote-unquote right side, would the reaction have been the same? I mean, doing what I do, working with the Muslim libertarian movement, I have people contact me on a pretty regular basis stating that they want to go to Iraq and join the Kurdish resistance or the Peshmerga in fighting against ISIS. Like, they literally want to physically take up arms against this militant group. And they come to me and want my advice or want me to help them raise money for the ability to get there. And I can't, you know?
Yeah, well,
because they're allied with the U.S. The Peshmerga are at this point. And it's literally like, okay, so these guys, the Daesh, are admittedly evil, sociopathic, power-hungry, disgusting individuals and a disgusting organization. But so is the United States government. So you literally are like, so do I want to tell you to join?
They are just an extension of the United States government.
Right.
Exactly. So for me, I'm for it because I like the idea of Muslims fighting back against ISIS. I like that idea. I think it's a great idea that people want to protect the Christians and the Yazidis and the Muslims that live there from these evil and violent people. But I can't tell them that they should go and join this other violent group that's connected to this much bigger evil group. You know, I mean, it's like you're stuck in this position where it's like, you know, do you want devil number one or devil number two?
Well,
go ahead.
ISIS in Syria is good, isn't it? But ISIS in Iraq is bad. Yet both groups are the same, and they're all being funded by America. And, well, America is funding Israel to the tune of $8 million a day.
That's an excellent point you just brought up. Why is it that whenever we hear something about, the media is saying, oh, well, there are these girls who are trying to join ISIS, but we never hear the Israeli lobby here in the United States.
Well, is this the first outbreak of people running off to join ISIS, or is this the first outbreak in the States?
I don't believe that this...
because currently, Todd, in the UK, there's upwards of 500 left here. Now, the fear porn that we're actually getting is what's going to happen when these people come back. Can we ban them or send them to Gitmo or what have you? Now, from the day this current problem with the Middle East and the terrorism and Muslim problem.
That's right. And guess what? We are going to, once these girls do come back, and the government, the American government, will prosecute them and probably ship their asses off, not to Jew, because, well, they may make an exception when it comes to terrorism. We don't care what fucking age you are. We're going to send your ass to
12-year-olds in Gitmo. They've had 11 and 12-year-olds in Gitmo. They're not worried about it.
So, exactly. So we're going to send your ass to Gitmo. And by the way, you're going to, if you want legal representation, you're going to have to meet with the tribunal. You're not going to have access to an attorney. And by the way, while we're at it, you're a fucking enemy combatant. Case closed.
Yeah.
That.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Well,
Now, I'll just continue on what's been going on in the UK, and we've never had, in all these years this has been going on, a organised terrorist group. Now, we went through the IRA period, and we were getting bombings left, right, and centre in Ireland and in the UK.
It's interesting. It's interesting you bring that up, Tam, because last week we had Mike Renzulli on the air. And, we had him as an interview guest. And he is as pro-war and anti-Islam and pro-Israel as anybody could get. And this guy, was trying to point the finger that, well, I don't hate Muslims, I just hate Islam. Like, I hate Catholicism, but I don't hate Catholics. What's the difference?
I just don't have no hate, really. And I know maybe that's hard to believe, but I just don't dislike anything. And I mean, I do dislike the lies all our governments are telling us, because if there was anything organised going on in the UK, we'd know about it. Everything that they took to court has fell through. Even the London bombings were a hoax.
That's because they're going after the wrong people. They need to look in the mirror.
Right.
Now there's a gentleman.
We have Bill Westmiller back on the air with us. Sorry, Bill. I guess we lost you. I didn't realize.
Yeah, I got disconnected, but I guess I'm back on now. I have a question.
Go ahead.
Since we have a Muslim expert, I have been doing commentary on various e-groups and so on and so forth, explaining that the way to best understand what's going on in the Middle East is to recognize that it's a tribal, sectarian conflict in every single aspect. It's the Shiites against the Sunnis. And as long as you can identify who's Sunni and who's Shiite, you can figure out who's fighting who and where they're fighting. But I tried to find some material that would explain to me the fundamental difference between Sunnis and Shiites that makes them fight to the death against each other. And basically that's what's happening. ISIS is a Sunni group, and they're fighting against Assad, who's associated with the Shiites. They're fighting against the Iraqi prime minister, who is Shiite. And so I'm just not totally clear on where the distinction is that makes this such a blood feud.
Well, it's actually even a little more involved than that, because you have multiple groups within the Sunni. You have your four main schools: Maliki, Hanafi, Hanbali, and Shafi'i. And then on top of that, you have secondary schools. And then you have the group that comes out of Saudi, that most of your extremism comes from, that used to be referred to as the Wahhabi movement, but are now referred to as the Salafis. I call them Najdis, because the ideology came from Al-Najd, with it's like the area of the Arabian Peninsula where the Saudi family and Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab came from. And because there's theological and eschatological implications in that term, Najdi. Our prophetic traditions about the end of time say that the horns of the devil will rise from Al-Najd, which is where the Wahhabi movement came from. And they reject they literally reject 1,400 years worth of scholarly, and have decided that they can rewrite the rules for verification, rewrite the rules for understanding, rewrite the rules for fiqh. And I kind of compare them to American evangelicals, because they think that they can just pick up a book and call themselves a religious expert. They don't need any classes in understanding. And the main difference between like simple Sunni and simple Shia is a conflict over leadership. Right. The Sunnis are a more democratic leaning position, where the most suited for the position in both morality and ability should be chosen by the people. They should never seek the position. They should be selected by the people. It should be something that they don't want, that they actually resist being selected for, and not in like a feigned piety. Like seriously, it's something like they see it as such a massive responsibility that they don't want to stand before God if they screw it up.
Okay, you're talking in very general terms, but clarify which one you're talking about. It's the Sunnis.
Oh, that's the Sunnis. That's the Sunnis. Now, the Shia believe that it should be a patrilineal, family bloodline-based handing down of power.
Yeah. But isn't that what the Saudis do? And they're Sunnis.
Exactly. That's part of the problem. Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. The Prophet ﷺ said that no man is greater than any other man in terms of abilities or right to lead or right to be a religious leader, except for based on merit, not based on the blood that runs through his vein. No man is greater than another man simply based on who his father was, what tribe he came from, what race they come from.
So are you telling me the royalty? Are you telling me the royalty in Saudi Arabia and UAE and Kuwait and so on are Sunni, but they're totally contradicting the Sunni tradition by having a royal family?
Yes, it's completely contradictory of the Sunni tradition. It's completely contradictory of the words of the Prophet ﷺ himself, who stated that this type of leadership was not allowed. There's even some religious scholars that theorize that that's the reason why the Prophet Muhammad had 4 sons, but none of them lived past 1 or 2 years of age, was that God wouldn't allow there to be that kind of a thing. Like if Muhammad had a son, because of the tribal way of doing things in Jahiliyyah before Islam came, where power was passed down by name, if he had had a son, then that would have automatically been the one who got it. But he didn't have a son. He had a son-in-law, but he had no direct heir. So there was no ability to that.
So, but the Shiites accept that son-in-law as the rightful inheritor of the tradition of Muhammad. Nevertheless, countries like Iran actually have elections, whereas other countries like that are Sunni don't. It's just puzzling.
Exactly. Which is yeah, I know, and that's one of the things that I state when people ask. People like to say, "Oh, well, this country does this and this country does that," and it's like, well, just because a state claims to practice or uphold a specific set of principles or standards doesn't make it so. Unless unless Obamacare is suddenly constitutional just because the government said so. I've read the document, and there's nothing in the document that authorizes the government to do what Obamacare does. So, I don't care what the Supreme Court says, and I don't care that Congress passed it. I don't care that the president signed it. It doesn't change the fact that it's outside the realms of what's acceptable. And the same thing happens
in the course. In the course of doing my little bit of research that I do on these news things, I understand. One thing that I bumped into that was surprising to me, I didn't realize, and it's probably not fully implemented, but in Turkey there is a First Amendment. There is a separation of church and state. And even though they funnel some money into the various churches, they are the exception. Even though they're majority Sunni, they do not accept the blending of the religion and the state into a caliphate, which struck me as surprising for any Arab country to take that position.
And a lot of religious scholars, these are people who are schooled in religion, particularly in eschatology, they think that that's why Saudi Arabia is in the position that they are, and why they're kept there and financially supported by the Western countries, is because they're basically back pocket bitches. I mean, let's just be honest. They are. They stay in that position. They're militarily occupying the most holy cities in Islam, and that gives them a sense of clout. And because if you resist them, they could just shut the doors to Mecca and no one would be able to make Hajj. And when I've called for a Hajj boycott on 3 or 4 different occasions because of extremely insane things that Saudi's done, like letting America build a drone base that they bomb Muslim weddings, from on Saudi Arabian territory, stuff like that. And so we've called for a boycott of Hajj, and people always come back to me with, they let us make Hajj, so we're going to do it, and we're not going to resist them. Because there's this fear, because there was this one time 300 years ago where this one group military occupied the Hijaz and didn't allow people to freely make pilgrimage. They're afraid if they resist the Saudis, that'll happen again. They're just not willing to upset the boat.
Well, let me ask you this. And this is the question that also comes into mind here, which is, when Bill Maher had Ben Affleck and the former Republican National Chair Michael Steele. And
he was surprisingly intelligent in that interview.
And not to mention, he also had Nick Kristof of the New York Times. And then to his right, he had Sam Harris, who is an atheist, by the way, who is condemning Islam.
I'd rather get rid of religion than get rid of rape.
And this is the guy who basically was saying that, there are a bunch of people in Islam who are trying to get out of it because they're apostates. And, yada, yada, yada. I mean, he's trying to throw in all this bullshit.
All the talking points.
And, my thing is, what is this guy's story, Sam Harris? I mean, is he a plant from the neoconservative wing of the Republican Party? Is he a plant?
He's a Zionist.
He's a Zionist.
Yeah, his family's Jewish. So's Bill Maher. Both of them come from Jewish background. They're Zion. They're open Zion. Like when basically if Muslims bomb and take over territory in the name of religion, it's wrong. But if Israel does it, well, how dare you question them? What do you want? There to be another Holocaust?
Right.
Yeah, right. I'm getting the high sign wife, so I'm going to have to sign off here. It's been a pleasure.
Okay.
Conversation. Got some.
Thanks a lot, Bill.
Thank you, Bill, for your contribution. Appreciate it very much.
Sure.
Thank you very much. I wanted to bring up.
Bill.
Well, he's already signed off already.
He's gone.
Still connected.
Okay.
Oh, hey. Well, before you go, while you're doing your research the next time, look at MuslimsForLiberty.org.
I will.
And also look up Muslims for Liberty.org. And also, if you're kicking around on Google doing research one day, Morgan Friedman's son, David Friedman, has written an amazing set of notes and lessons on Sharia law and comparing it to Rothbard's theory of stateless privatized law.
Okay.
And
interesting.
Well, because particularly if it's classical application of Sharia, then basically you would take Rothbard's theory of stateless law, change all the judges to law professors, and now you've got Sharia.
Right.
I'll check it out.
So definitely take a look into that.
Will do.
Yeah.
Have a good day.
Have a great day, Bill. Okay, so I wanted to ask a couple of topics here, and then we'll call it quits on the show tonight. I wanted to talk to you about, the high school shooting that took place in Marysville, Washington, I guess, and Washington, I'm sorry. This is another gun control thing that's going on. It makes me wonder how much gun control there is going on in the Middle East. But at the same time, here in the States, this is a situation where apparently this one kid walked into a high school. He was brandishing a firearm, shot 2 kids, killed them, injured 1 kid, and basically turned the gun on himself and just went kablam. My question is, isn't this a perfect example of gun-free zones gone wild?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he knew that there were really going to be no repercussions. He could kill as many people as he could before the police got there. And where did he procure this firearm from? Also, where'd the gun come from?
Right.
Yeah.
So, what do you think, Mark? Because I would love to find out.
I mean, I'm kind of. Is he a registered gun owner? He's a 16-year-old kid. Is he owner? Is he like a registered firearm owner? Did somehow the registration process stopped him from getting a gun?
I don't think he is, though.
It's not legal for him to register a firearm yet. So somehow that whole registration process didn't stop him from getting this gun.
And background checks really don't do shit because, let's be honest, if someone sells me a gun in his own home, is that going to stop me from getting the gun from him at that exact second with the waiting periods demanded by the NCIS background check registry? I mean, the NICS, I'm sorry, background check registry. I mean, is that going to stop me from getting that gun? Of course not. Your thoughts, Mark?
I think I'll defer to Tame Elf. Tame, can you tell us a little bit about the Second Amendment and the topic that we're discussing?
Tame?
I know absolutely nothing about the Second Amendment because I'm UK. I've not really read the Constitution. I don't follow any political party, but as regards to guns, I live in a place where, I live on a place called the Isle of Man. It's only very small, and there is no guns unless you're a farmer or a poacher. There's no gun crime here. Nobody gets killed by gun. We rarely have murders. But saying that, if I lived in America, I would want a gun.
Well,
in the way I look at it, I'll go ahead and answer since you did ask me. Is the way I look at it is, I used to be a huge Second Amendment proponent, and I don't have a problem with anyone who still is, because ultimately, if someone wants to put a gun down my throat and pull the trigger, they've sealed their fate. Okay, they've lost their soul. I do not live in fear.
Well, I guess my question here is that the left, before I get to my question here, I think the left is going to use this in such a very profound way where they're going to say, you right-wingers, you members of the NRA, this is what happens when you want guns legal in the U.S., when you want your assault weapons legalized, when you want your AK-47s, what's next? You want a missile silo in your backyard? You want to carry a bazooka to McDonald's, for lunch? I mean, it's ridiculous. What happened there is because of a gun-free zone, a ban on guns, which basically has resulted in higher rates of crime. It's no different from what happens when you go to, say, it was no different from what happened in Aurora, Colorado, the night when The Dark Knight Rises movie was premiering that night, when that psychotic dipshit actually opened fire on that crowd in the movie theater, and he was covered from head to toe. Or what happened in Sandy Hook. I mean, everybody wants to make this out to be another Sandy Hook. Sandy Hook was far more oppressive in terms of gun rights than what happened in Washington. But the fact remains, gun laws that keep people from having access to a firearm, and it doesn't take a genius to figure this shit out. And I am getting sick and tired of people taking way too long to even figure this out. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that preventing firearms in the hands of criminals who supposedly have a mental illness, they're going to find ways of getting the firearm. They're going to go into the black market. You go down Detroit, and you can get a sawed-off shotgun for a very high price, for crying out loud. You can't even legally carry a gun in the city streets of Detroit, for instance. So ever since, I think it was, the District of the District of Columbus versus Keller decision, that basically said that you can legally carry a firearm in Washington, D.C., that is, and you don't need to have a gun permit. You don't need to have a license for it. But then the city added a new law, a provision that said, well, if you want to carry a firearm, fine. but you have to register it with the police department. That's a very bad thing. And you know something? Let's get back to the whole criminal elements. These people who are criminals, they're doing it because, number one, it's the medications they're taking. It's not because they're fucking mentally ill or because they need to talk to their shrink. The shrinks are part of the problem, and so are the medications. End quote. So I guess the question is this not also surprising that we're seeing another Sandy Hook and another Adam Lanza on, going willy-nilly simply because, hey, this is what happens when you outlaw guns in a particular geographic area, and people are going to people are going to get guns illegally and they can still commit crimes because no gun buyback program is going to stop people from carrying those firearms. They're not going to comply with it. And only the law-abiding ones. And then on the other side of the equation, you've got people with these gun restrictions that really just make no sense whatsoever. It's the criminals who are going to who are going to commit the crimes, and it's the people who are weak and defenseless who are going to get killed simply because they had to call 911 to wait for a cop to show up when he doesn't do a goddamn thing until the crime's over. Will, your thoughts?
Well, look at it's so funny that, we were literally right in the middle of having a national conversation about how our media runs and is this fear-driven machine that, has to politicize every single issue, and how this had just happened in Canada a few days ago. Their media didn't do any of this stuff. We were really, seriously in the middle of having a national conversation about how the American public they would rather have the Canadian broadcast channel as their news than Fox and CNN and MSDNC. And, in the middle of the conversation, they're like, yeah, to hell with it. We're going to do our normal thing anyway.
More and more people every day More and more people every day are turning to the alternative media.
Yep.
More and more
Absolutely.
every day. I'm talking about by leaps and bounds. Yeah. Say that again, Tame.
I'm finding more truth because everything that's just recently been talked about, the 3, 4, 5 different places of shootings, have more anomalies.
Right.
Yeah. Like as if they're staged.
Right.
I'm saying a lot of it. See, at the end of the Second World War, one of the Japanese generals was interrogated. He must have been a very, very high up guy as to why Japan never invaded America. And his quote was, "Would you invade a country with over 250 million guns? You'd be suicide."
There'd be a gun behind every bush, behind every tree.
So people of America, please keep your guns because from here where I'm sitting in Britain, I'm watching you poor fuckers being killed every day by your police and wait until they turn the fucking army on you.
Right.
I'm sorry, but that's how I see it.
Right. And by the way, because of the whole situation going on in the Middle East, going on to the next and last topic of the evening, apparently Ron Paul has written a column in which he declares that national socialism is anti-liberty and un-American. He is fucking damn right. I mean, this is a guy who...
Now, repeat that again, Todd. What did he say exactly was un-American and anti-liberty?
National service, a.k.a.
National service. Did everybody hear that? I just want to say it one more time. National service is anti-liberty and un-American. Go, Todd.
And not only that, he's been saying this in response to what, former Clinton stooge Robert Reich said, well, we need to throw the young people in for national service because they must serve in the military or do some sort of state-mandated community service. And you know something, Robert Reich, my message to him is, fuck you.
Go fuck yourself. Go fuck yourself, Robert Reich.
I mean, this is the guy who wants the millennials. He wants today's generation of young people, Generation Y, a.k.a. millennials, to serve in the military or do community service. Why don't you go and do community service or serve in the military, Robert Reich? But don't tell the young people what they should do because they don't want to have anything to do with your fucking war. And they don't want to clean up litter or do something like, say, work for a charity when they feel that they have far more productive things to do with their time and not because of what you think is productive for them.
We're not wanting to feed our children to the war machine. You will not feed off our children's blood any longer. Get it?
That's right. And that's the thing, this is what the Vietnam War generation was protesting against. They were burning their fucking draft cards in protest of the war in Vietnam. What happened to that generation? Did they just jump off a fucking cliff or something?
They got money.
Tame has something to say. What's that, Tame?
Technology. Sitting in front of the TV, playing war games and everything, and it just educates them into, that's my job, that's what I'm going to do. I've recently had a conversation with a young lad when he said, because, I look at my little system here, and it's like a microcosm of what's going on out there, and we're all fucked, mate. I'm telling you, this system, right, is unsustainable. There is no jobs for these children except fucking shelf stacking or fucking war.
There was a Reason Group poll that came out just recently, which is tied to what the young generation, what you were just saying there, Tame, and it was saying that over 76% of Americans, roughly close to 80%, who were basically saying, well, we support the drone attacks, the airstrikes in Syria against ISIS, but except for one group. You want to know what that young group is? It's the young people, the millennials, who are saying, fuck no, we don't blow.
Right. I think all of us are going to be pleasantly surprised. The shift is happening. Yeah. It's already, Babylon is already fallen. There's a great video. There's a great video on YouTube. I encourage everyone listening tonight to check it out. It's called Babylon is Fallen by Kate of Gaia. And that will open your eyes and show you the truth about who you truly are, truly are.
You're absolutely right. And, what's really upsetting here is this whole notion that, that the older generations, like, for example, I was just talking to a conservative who I thought was a libertarian, but it turns out she's a conservative Republican. like a plant, trying to act like she's part of the movement when she really isn't. And of all the things, she hates libertarians on war policy. She thinks Rand Paul and Ron Paul are off kilter on this whole thing, that we need to have war. We need to kill those motherfucking ISIS members. We need to bomb them back into the Stone Age. And, and I assume right at that moment, oh, so you must be one of these Zionist-loving motherfuckers on the planet. Next time I'm going to have her come on this show because she was interested. And we're going to have her on this show. So keep in mind, we're going to have her on here. And
who was that you're talking about? I zoned out for a minute.
Bettina Viviano.
Oh.
And she was, she's got this picture of a Republican picture on her Facebook profile. And she goes, well, that's the only thing I have against libertarians, war, immigration, yada, yada, yada. I mean, I'm like, okay, so you're not a libertarian. You're one of these, these asshole Republicans who just really want to bomb the fuck out of the entire world because American is exceptional. That's what was going through my head.
The most important thing we can do, Todd, is to exit the system. The system is dead, okay? And the best thing we can do at this point is exit the system. And, I about a month ago, I found the only way to truly exit the system is by understanding that we are living in a legal fiction. We're living in a fairy tale, a fairy land, if you will.
Yep.
And so...
The United States government is a corporation.
Yes, and look, but look, it's based out of London. It's the Crown Corporation, which controls the entire planet, right? Or they think they do.
Right.
And so, whenever you are born into this body, your parents unwittingly registered your birth, and in doing so, the Crown Corporation copyrighted your name and took ownership of it. So, anytime you use your legal name, okay, that's how they get you. That's how they get jurisdiction over you. And so, if you want to learn more about what I'm talking about, visit this website. It's called losethename.com.
Right.
Losethename.com, and you can learn all about it. It's really the linchpin. It's a way out of the mark of the beast. Yeah. That may be a little bit over some people's head, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, you don't quite grasp it, just visit that website, and there's lots of essays there that will help you to understand what I'm talking about.
And on that note, we're going to call it a night here. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much, guys. And
thank you. And no commercials, brilliant. I love it.
No commercials.
No commercials.
This is a service to humanity. This is not something to generate money.
Really enjoyed it, Todd. Thank you. Thank you, Peachy, and thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you, Will.
Yeah, y'all have a great night.
Very much, Will. Tremendous. You're such a beautiful spirit. I love you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
You too.
Take it easy, guys, and we will see you next Saturday. Good night, and don't do anything I wouldn't do.